We ready? All right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm Denver Police Chief Ron Thomas, here with Major Crimes Division Commander Matt Clark to provide a in-depth follow-up briefing of a officer-involved shooting that occurred a couple Tuesday evenings ago, July 1st. I know that all of you have seen videos of the encounter that we were released earlier today, and I understand that there will be questions that we will be happy to answer to the best of our ability when we can or as we can. So with that, Matt.
Good morning. I'm Matt Clark, the commander of the Denver Police Department's Major Crimes Division. Thank you for being here today and allowing us an opportunity to provide an update on the police shooting incident that occurred in the 4300 block of Del Rio Court on July 1st, 2025. Today's briefing is a follow-up to the information that the chief provided on that night. The information I will share today is based upon witness interviews, statements from the involved officers, and evidence recovered from the scene. This is an ongoing investigation. As the chief said, we'll answer questions to the degree we're able to at the conclusion. With that being said, I'll jump in. On July 1st, at approximately 9:05 p.m., two uniformed Denver police officers assigned to District 5 were conducting routine patrol in the area of East 44th Avenue and Andrews Drive in the Montbello neighborhood. The officers in their patrol vehicle observed a large firework launched overhead. As they checked the area, they observed additional fireworks being fired. While driving north in the 4300 block of Del Rio Court, they saw a mortar tube positioned in the roadway in front of a residence and observed four individuals standing nearby on the curb. The officer stopped their marked patrol vehicle, activated the emergency overhead lights, and exited to contact the group. As the officers approached, one adult male began walking towards an open garage. An officer gave verbal direction for the individual to stop and return. The individual disregarded these commands and continued walking away. As the officer followed, he observed the individual move both hands towards his waistband, lift his shoulders, and look back over his right shoulder towards the officer. These were actions that the officer interpreted as an attempt to access a firearm. The officer then saw the individual draw a firearm from his waistband beneath his shirt, noticing the clear outline of the weapon pressing against the fabric. The officer observed that the individual was not attempting to flee, but appeared to be actively arming himself while glancing over his shoulder in the direction of the officer. Fearing that the individual was preparing to shoot, the officer drew his duty weapon and issued clear commands to remove his hands and raise his hands. When the individual failed to comply, the officer discharged 2 rounds from a distance of approximately 10 to 15 feet, striking the subject in the leg. The individual fell to the ground and was taken into custody without further incident. Officers immediately rendered medical aid until paramedics arrived and transported the subject to the hospital. He is expected to recover from his injuries. Approximately 15 seconds elapsed between the officers exiting their vehicle and the discharge of shots. This underscores the rapid progression of events in this incident. Investigators and crime lab personnel recovered a black, loaded 10mm Glock semi-automatic handgun in a landscaping adjacent to the driveway. This is the firearm that the individual pulled from his waistband. There's no evidence indicating the individual discharged that weapon. Investigators determined the officer fired 2 rounds from his duty handgun. The final decision on any potential charges against the subject will be made by the Denver District Attorney's Office in the coming days. The officer involved in this incident is a patrol officer assigned to District 5 in Northeast Denver. The officer joined the department in 2019 and has not been involved in a prior police shooting. All officers that were present had their body-worn cameras activated during the incident. In accordance with department policy, the officer involved in this incident has been placed in a non-line capacity as he completes the department's reintegration program. The investigation of this incident is being coordinated by the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, the Colorado State Patrol, Denver Police's Homicide Investigative Unit, and the Denver District Attorney's Office. As in all of our investigations, the Office of the Independent Monitor is actively overseeing the investigation for transparency and accountability. This remains an active investigation. Anyone with information that we haven't spoken with, anybody with video of this incident, we'd appreciate if they contact the Denver Police Department or submit it to us through Metro Denver Crime Stoppers. I'll briefly go over a couple slides to provide some context, and then we can address any questions. This is the item, the mortar tube that the officers recognized was in the roadway as they drove down the 4300 block of Del Rio Court. And this is directly in front of the target residence where the 4 individuals were along the curb line. This is a still shot from a surveillance camera at the residence where this occurred. At this point, the individual has moved away from the sidewalk. He's looking back towards the officer who's approaching and appears to be manipulating his t-shirt as he's moving his hands towards his waistband. This is a still frame from the officer's body-worn camera, and this full video was released this morning as the subject's going away from the officer towards the garage and has his hands towards his waistband. This is a still frame. The officer has just discharged the first round. As you can see, the slide of the firearm is coming back and the relative position of the subject at this point. This is the firearm that was located in the rocks directly adjacent to the driveway on the side of the driveway near where the subject was contacted. This is the firearm that was recovered. Again, a Glock 10mm semi-automatic handgun that was loaded. These were the rounds that were recovered by the crime scene investigators. I can address any questions with the chief. Sir?
Is the suspect being charged? Or the person who was shot by the officer being charged?
So he has not been charged yet, and we're submitting the case for the district attorney's office for consideration of charges.
What are those considerations?
Well, that's why he hasn't been charged yet. We're still looking at what's applicable in this scenario, if any charges, quite honestly.
Does he have like a criminal background where he's not allowed to have a weapon, or does he have probation, parole?
So we typically don't talk about criminal histories in these briefings.
Are you able to identify the suspect at this point?
And since he's not charged or on any hold or hasn't been arrested, we're not identifying him today.
Has the officer involved been placed on admin leave, both officers, just one officer?
So as was described, there were 2 officers at the scene when force was used. Only one of them was involved in that. They both are going through our reintegration process. So one of the officers is placed in an online assignment. The other officer is kind of going through a hybrid model because they did experience some of the same trauma.
Chief, how would you characterize this response by the officer?
Appropriate. I mean, I think, as you see, there's an officer or an individual who's armed with a weapon, access that weapon. I think it's important to acknowledge the fact that so far this year we have made hundreds of armed encounters with individuals, and we've only had 6 officer-involved shootings, so less than 1% of those encounters end with shots being fired by officers, and that's because generally we gain compliance. Those individuals, raise their hands, they follow officers' commands, they don't access the weapon and place those officers in danger.
Is the suspect currently still hospitalized, or have they been discharged at this time?
So we actually checked this morning in advance of this, and the hospital is not releasing that information to us. And since he's not on a hold, we don't have anybody guarding him specifically, so I don't know.
The family says, you kind of addressed this on your briefing, that his back was turned to the officer. Can you just talk about that? What would you say to the family says that his back was turned?
Yes, I understand the concern that presents, but as you can see, his movements were obvious. He was accessing that weapon. He did have a weapon. The officer recognized that he had a weapon, and I think it's just fractions of a second that it would take someone to move from a place where they have a weapon in their hand to where that weapon is being pointed at the officer and shots being fired. I think a week prior to this, we had another armed individual that actually did go from accessing a weapon in the very same location to firing shots at the officers. And so I think that this is a reasonable response from officers.
How did the weapon make it from the suspect to that landscaping? Did he throw it there? Did the officers remove it from him and put it there?
My understanding is that that it was thrown. So after he was struck by a gunfire, I think that the weapon was thrown. So that's actually just, I think, mere feet from where he landed after he was struck by gunfire.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.